Do you find yourself searching, yearning for more, but you don't know what that more is? I'm Catherine Duncan, near-death survivor, mystic, and intuitive. Welcome to Everyday Awakening. On this podcast, I explore what it means to be alive. I help you awaken into your soul and live fully now. Through inspiring conversations, we'll dive into mindfulness, spirituality, and the transformative power of presence and living aligned with this universal energy. Together, we'll examine life's biggest questions, and I'll share practical wisdom to help you open your heart and awaken to the preciousness of being alive. Today, I'm thrilled to share with you my conversation with my friend Joseph Nguyen, the author of the New York Times bestselling book, Don't Believe Everything You Think, which has been translated now into 40 languages. His 3 books have touched the hearts and minds of over 1 million people worldwide, drawing inspiration from philosophy, spirituality, psychology. Joseph distills timeless wisdom into simple, pragmatic, and accessible books. Joseph helps others realize who they truly are beyond their own thinking and conditioning to live an abundant life free of emotional suffering. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Catherine. It's always just such a joy to be here with you.
I have to say, I am a voracious reader. I am reading books every week: philosophy, theology, spirituality, self-help. And your book, Don't Believe Everything You Think, is the #1 book I read in 2024. And I've shared it with many clients, and everyone is loving your book.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, that means so much, especially, it's one thing to kind of be moved by a single book. It's just that a lot of people just don't read as much. But for someone like you who reads quite a bit, so for you to say that it means more than you know.
So let's just dive in. Can you tell me what came to you to start writing this book? I believe your background is in advertising, marketing, but I'm just curious, what led you to writing this book?
So I believe that an artist, a writer, or just any creator's greatest work usually comes from their deepest pains. And that was very much true for my book specifically. It came from hitting rock bottom in life. And that came after starting my advertising company, growing it, scaling it, essentially achieving almost everything that I wanted in terms of, monetary wealth and all of that, success, whatever you want to call it. But feeling more empty after doing all that than before I started. And then tons of series of unfortunate events happened. So my business partner and I fell out. I was kind of left with 50 grand worth of debt at the age of 22 years old. My partner at the time, now wife, had a chronic illness where her stomach became paralyzed and eventually had to get a feeding tube. That, on top of the business, on top of leaving college and kind of becoming slightly estranged with my parents since they came over here from Vietnam and just wanted me to get a college education, which is the only thing that they didn't have back then. For me to leave that and to start the business and do all these things was quite difficult for them and for me as well. So that whole concoction, what led me to the rock bottom, where I essentially questioned everything in my life. Why did I even want these goals? What was the purpose of even having money? And let's say that I do have it, now what? What am I supposed to do with it? Um, and because I was running that business and everything fell apart, I was chronically anxious. So every day waking up, not knowing where my next customer is going to come from, if I was going to have enough money to pay for rent and all these things for the employees and all that stuff. So all of that, money can solve many things, but not everything. It can solve a lot of things externally, but not necessarily things inside. And that was the essentially genesis of my journey to trying to find the answer. That's when I started turning to, therapy, spirituality, psychology, philosophy, drawing inspiration from many different religions, modalities, different schools of thought like Stoicism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and even Western things in terms of philosophy and psychology. So, yeah, a lot of things happen.
So I'm hearing you hit rock bottom, and did it come to you through like hearing, sensing, nudging? I mean, it sounds like you really got clear. make a change?
It was very unclear for years. It was just a a prompting or a sense of knowing in my heart that there was an answer, but the answer was not revealed for a very long time. So it just launched me into a whole entire, if you want to call it like a soul searching journey. And it wasn't until I kind of met a few teachers like Sydney Banks, Michael Neal, um, Alan Watts, Thich Nhat Hanh, and many, many different others where I read their works, heard their words, something like that, and it finally clicked. Um, where and how peace can be found. So it wasn't until I tried everything I possibly could, though. I tried going to therapy, trying cognitive behavioral therapy. I did uh, energy work, like, got Reiki
Hmm.
done and did hypnotherapy. I tried going vegan for a while. So changing like I thought the food that I was eating was causing a lot of anxiety, which it can. I did Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditation retreat for a week. So like complete, just I mean, I think it was like 6, 7 hours of meditating a day. And yeah, so all of that, which is quite a bit, but I think a lot of people have tried many more things and or even less. Uh, but eventually, one of the interesting things about trying all those things is that every single modality worked. Uh, the only thing was it only worked while I was doing it. But as soon as I stopped meditating, exited the meditation, I would relapse right back into, tons of anxiety, and stress. And so that puzzled me more than anything else. So like right after, during therapy, I was like, oh yeah, the release is great. But then after therapy, I went right back. And so I started asking myself the question is it possible for me to feel how I felt during those modalities? And if so, what is the mechanism that allowed that to happen? So, and during those modalities, I just realized that, you know, the reason why they worked was because they stopped me from narrating my own experiences and allowed me to eject myself from my own personal experience. So that's when the inner critic kind of stopped chattering, was when someone else was either talking
Hmm.
at me or doing something, or I was focused on something else. But I didn't realize that I could actually let go of my thinking, not needing a therapist to talk and being distracted by something else, which is why, a lot of us turn to different escapes. Going out, drinking can turn, bad into addictive substances and things like that. But the reason why we turn to those things is because they essentially help us stop thinking. But when those things kind of run out of their juice, then we go right back. But that is how we can do it, which is essentially to, let go of that chatter. Like most people don't
Hmm.
realize that you can actually stop thinking.
Right. Yeah. I mean, instead of numbing yourself, it sounds like starting to have some aha moments of, huh, this is what it feels like when my mind is like, living on autopilot going 100 miles an hour, which leads me to what would you say, core message of the book? Don't believe everything you think.
The core message is almost in the title itself, but it's really the core message is the moment you stop thinking is when your peace begins. And thinking is essentially the judgment that we have of our own experience or our thoughts. It's not just any mental activity, it's specifically the judgment. It's the criticism of whatever is going on in our minds or outside in the world. That is the root cause of suffering. And many of us don't realize that we don't have to judge every single thing that we go through.
Hmm.
Why do we have to say, like, if we take a walk in nature, we're not walking around saying like that tree is ugly or it's right or wrong. It's just a tree, and we appreciate it for what it is. Same thing with mountains. Same thing with almost anything in nature. But where we kind of start judging everything is when we start looking at ourselves. That is what causes the resistance. It's resisting reality. It's wishing we did something different. It's wishing other people were different. That creates an illusion or a fantasy, right? That doesn't exist right now, because that's not what it is. It creates a that resistance essentially, and that is where the emotional suffering originates from. So as soon as we let go of that judgment, then we're able to kind of find peace, and we actually automatically drop into the present moment when we drop our thinking. So it actually, you know, most of the time the solution is not in doing more, it's actually doing less and not doing what's causing the problem in the first place. So in this case, it's less about like trying to do a bunch of different habits like working out and eating better and going to therapy and like trying to add in all these things, which are all great, right? But if we're not kind of tackling the source of all these things, then all those things could kind of become futile. And that's exactly what happened to me. It didn't work until I finally was able to drop the judgment from my own life. Yeah, so that's kind of the juxtaposition I kind of place in the book.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Would you equate that to your ego mind. I know in your book you also talk about universal mind and universal thought, but the first section, would you say more ego mind, or what would you
Yeah, so
say?
there's a lot of different ways to define the thinking mind. Ego is probably the the most accurate word. It's that part of ourselves that wants to self-preserve, to defend, that thinks that it has something to lose. It's the limited part of our psyche, if you will. But a lot of times when I use the word ego, like people don't really understand what it is, and it's really hard to differentiate, right? It's like how do you stop the ego, so to speak? But like if I say just stop egoing. Like, how do you just stop doing that? But if you just stop thinking, it's like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I never really thought that I could just like stop thinking, um, and just be. So I use the word thinking very specifically because it kind of like cuts through to a part of ourselves that kind of knows that, oh, that is true. Um, but ego would be a great word for it. The reptilian brain or the croc brain is another part of it,
Mhm.
right? The lower self, those are all synonyms to me.
Very interesting. Yeah, I've been inspired by, when you can quiet your ego mind, when you can come into the moment, how much guidance we get. It just the stillness, the guidance. My senses is that when I think of your terminology around universal mind, does that sound accurate? I'd love to hear more what you think about universal mind.
Yeah, and so that's kind of like a more esoteric or spiritual term for just anything beyond our thinking mind. It's the part of ourselves, something that people might more be able to relate to would be universal mind is essentially your intuition. It's your heart. It's the part of you that it's just your higher self. And so when you kind of drop the ego and drop the thinking mind, you actually drop into your intuition, your universal mind, something that is much greater than just the personal self. And that is the source of your dreams, your aspirations, peace, love, joy, um, anything that excites you and inspires you, it comes from that place in your heart. And when we listen more to the egoic mind, we actually suppress or silence that universal mind, that intuition. And that's why
Mhm,
we feel a deep sense of lack of fulfillment when we listen too much to this survival mind.
mhm,
But as soon as we start to tune a little bit more into our hearts, we don't have to, kind of like drop the thinking mind entirely. Usually it's a
mhm,
gradual shift because we start to see the illusion and start to see how many issues it's causing in our lives. So we will slowly let go of that thinking mind of ours, and then the more that we kind of tune into our hearts, the happier we are. That's the part of ourselves that says, "Hey, move to this." Random new place,
mhm.
and it's like super exciting, or you should leave your job now and get this new one, or the part of ourselves that says marry this person, right? Or talk to this person, or leave this relationship, right? It's that still calm voice in the back of in the back of your mind, that's always gently guiding you. That's the part that we're meant to listen to, and that's what I say. There's a difference between thought and thinking. Thinking is that judgmental criticism of our thoughts, and then our thoughts are actually that our hearts, right? Our intuition, and that's
Mhm,
the part
mhm,
that where creativity comes from. So all of our ideas, starting a business, or meeting this new person, or moving, or going to college, or leaving college, all of these kind of like big uh, kind of actions that fundamentally change our lives comes from that part, that intuition.
Yeah, this deeply resonates with me. Of just how when we can take time and come drop out of our busy mind, come into our body, come into the moment, just the stillness, the guidance, if it's hearing, sensing, feeling, it's there. It's there in that guidance from, whatever you want to call it, universal intelligence, the guidance. I just want to share a few weeks ago, I heard an interview with Lenny Kravitz, who's one of my favorite singers, and they were asking him, "How do you write your albums?" And the last album, his album Human, is fabulous. And he started talking about how 3, 4 in the morning, he starts to just start to sense. He starts to hear words or hymns, and then he gets up and he just lets it start flowing through him.
I love that. Yeah,
Isn't
and
that
that's
good?
exactly it. And the
Yeah.
reason why he's able to kind of get that is um, he essentially learned how to let go of the thinking mind and allow
Mhm.
something greater to come through. So that's like the universal mind, the intuition, or whatever it is. But essentially, if we're not stuck in our minds, then we can hear something else. And that's exactly how this book was written too, is, it wasn't really written from this egoic place of trying to prove something, be something, or
Mhm.
anything like that. It was written purely from inspiration and just, listening and tuning into that muse. And then I just wrote whatever came through.
Yeah, what I love about your book is, and I'm a big fan of Eckhart Tolle, but your book, it's so digestible from the first page.
Yeah, I mean, I've read Eckhart, and he was my first foray into spirituality, and that book changed my life. And but after I read it, I was kind of left with like, what do I do with my life? I don't really fully understand what's going on. I don't really get
Mhm.
how to just let go of the ego. Like, if I let go of the ego, what do I listen to? And then I always seem to like fall back into the ego because I didn't understand the mechanism creating the ego, right? There's a source of the ego, and so that's very rarely talked about. And people can say like trauma and things like that, but really it's not necessarily the event that causes us to be that way. It's our thinking about the past event. And that's why it puzzled me so much, because if it's true that, our experiences fully defined who we are and there's no way to change that, then every single person that has gone through a traumatic event should just be, anxious all the time and depressed, and never able to
Mhm.
escape and have so many different mental illnesses. But that's not true. So how can two different people who have gone through seemingly similar traumatic
Mhm.
experiences have radically
Mhm.
different lives? One of them can fall deep into depression and not never be able to get out, but the other person is thriving and creating a life that they love, and they became, either started a business or did something creative or wrote a book or did something, right, to change themselves in the world. How is
Mhm.
that possible? So that means that it can't be the events in our lives that control us. It's something else, and it's actually the interpretation of those events that control how we feel. In the book, one of the core thesis is you know our emotions don't come from external events, but from how we think about those events. We can always shift how we think about a certain event, and therefore change how we feel about it. But the best way to be able to do that is actually to let go of the thinking rather than just change it. That cuts it from its source in terms of the suffering. And one example I love to give, of kind of like the difference between thought and thinking, or even just like why thinking is the root cause of a lot of the suffering, is like just to kind of ask the question, when you're very, very stressed and anxious, how much thinking is going on? So much thinking. Thinking like, I should have done this, I should have done that, or if this person were only like this, this would happen. And so it's so much ruminating, and constant thinking when we're in that state. But let's flip the question on its head and ask, when you are the happiest that you've ever been, think of like a really, really joyous occasion, or moment in your life. Like, how much thinking was going on? Probably not much, right?
That's lovely. Yeah, that's good.
And so that to me was kind of the epiphany that I needed to realize that, oh my gosh, like, I'm happiest when I'm not thinking, when I'm able to simply be in the present moment rather than wishing it were different, or wishing I was somewhere else, or wishing that something else was changed. But only when I was fully present, then I was happy. And that just comes from not really just not thinking. And when I constantly think all the time, that's when I get the most anxious.
Mhm.
Um, so that was a big moment for me.
And I find in my private practice that it's helping people understand that they're not their mind. Like we have 60, 70 thoughts a day, and knowing that we can watch our thoughts, we can watch our emotions, that even just doing a 1 or 2 minute breath exercise or a body movement to all of a sudden like zoom, have you slow down. I've had many people when we do this that all of a sudden are like, wow, they have a moment of silence and stillness, and it's just, oh, it's magical.
Yeah, and it doesn't take long. Like, most people think that it takes years and years of, even
Mhm.
decades of therapy and doing all these major life shifts to be able to find peace, but that's not true. Like, you can find peace in a matter of minutes. As soon as you start taking deep breaths, and why I love breath work, maybe like 4 seconds in, holding for 7 seconds,
Yep.
breathing out for 8 seconds. That 4-7-8 method is highly effective. Holding, breathing in for 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 4. Those are extremely useful and transformative exercises that are very, very simple. You can't take a breath in the future. You can't take a breath in the past. So as soon as you
Mhm.
start focusing on your breath, you are automatically in the present moment. And from there, you can find your grounding. Um,
Mhm.
and you're coming back to yourself, coming back to your heart. And from there, just making the conscious decision of, do you want to keep suffering? Do you want to keep
Mhm.
thinking this way, which is creating the suffering? And if you say no, then you can just say, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. And you can just drop the thinking and to just trust that you'll be able to find a solution, or that it will fix itself, operating from that place of joy rather than from fear. Uh, and that in itself is really all you need.
And would you agree that it's a once you start to have a little sense of breathing or coming into your body and feeling a little stillness, like, oh, that's new, that it's a practice, it's a choice, it's a conscious, I mean, it's a practice for people to experience this and to grow that experience of some stillness. I mean, I have found in my life, once I do it every single day, I meditate, but my body craves it if I start to miss time in
Yeah,
silence.
that's correct. It just depends on where you want to focus your energy and what you want to feel like, right? So most people are constantly focused on what they don't want,
Hmm.
what they don't want to feel, and so they're focused on trying to resist anxiety, resist depression, resist fear. But it's in that resistance is the thing that's perpetuating it. But if we want peace and we start to focus on that, it's like, okay, if I want peace, I can choose to let go of the thinking that's causing, you know, the anxiety. Then I can start to kind of create a baseline around that. Once you've had that and you kind of make the decision that you no longer want to suffer in this way any longer,
Hmm.
when you start making the conscious decision to
Hmm.
change. But a lot of times we haven't suffered enough. We only change when the pain is great enough. And yeah, I didn't change until I went through, essentially rock bottom. And that's because we're really stubborn in that way. But as soon as you've gone through enough and you say like, this is enough, this is not how I want to live. But it is a conscious decision that you have to make, every single day, multiple times a day. And this is a practice that you're meant to kind of do throughout the day. Otherwise, you kind of just relapse back into your old self. But this has to be a new way of life, a new identity almost. I don't really like using the word identity because we kind of attach ourselves to it, but you do have to fundamentally shift, that old self, let go of it in order to find peace. Otherwise, you're going to go back to the same old habits.
I have found that, you're using your mind, you're thinking, you're working, you're planning, you're organizing. So you're using your mind, let's say, but that stillness, that silence, it's there. It's in the back. I mean, we can live multi-dimensionally where that stillness is there, but you're using your mind. It's all there.
Yeah, so a lot of people ask like if you're not thinking, what are you using to navigate your day? So
Hmm.
that's where thought comes in. And thought is actually neutral. It doesn't really have an agenda, so to speak, like trying to coerce you into doing anything, but thinking will. Thinking will manipulate you, kind of use fear to kind of get you to take certain actions to try to be quote unquote safe. But a good example of thought versus thinking is this, like, let's say it's raining outside. The thought, which is a neutral observation or intuitive prompting, that's how I define thought. The thought is, oh, it's raining. That is a neutral observation. Thinking, on the other hand, thinking is what I say, like, it's judgment, right? A judgment of that particular experience or thought. And thinking looks like this rain ruined my day, or this always happens to me. I really hate the rain. So all of that is thinking about the event, but the initial thought was just it's raining. And so once you start to see the distinction between the two and that thinking is completely unnecessary and is the reason why we're suffering, then you can start to just focus on thoughts only, and to let go of anything else that might be judgmental. Like think about like what is the benefit of thinking this rain is the worst thing ever? Like, how does that benefit us in any single way? But by following the thought, like, oh, it's raining, then you can follow the next thought of like, oh, maybe I should get an umbrella, right? And do that. Or I can just enjoy the rain as it is. Um, it doesn't really think about anything else. It just is. And so how do we use this in daily life? Well, as you're going about daily life, you can definitely plan, you can strategize, you can do all these things. Um, it's just you're not judging it. You're gonna have some sort of mental activity to do that activity, but maybe it's just following the recipe and you
Hmm.
use like the wrong portion of spices. Thought is, oh, I messed up. That is just a neutral observation. I made a mistake. Thinking is, I'm the worst chef. I should never cook. I've always been a bad cook. All of these different things, right? So if we're using thought, we can just say, okay, we messed up this recipe. A thought could be, how can I fix this now? Or can I just start from scratch again, right? And that's
Hmm.
okay. I just lose some time, but that's fine. So that's a very, specific example of thought is meant to be creative. It's generative. It's non-judgmental. Um, that's what thought is. It creates things. That's that's what you want to use when you're brainstorming, when you're wanting to create anything in the world. That's what
Hmm.
artists use. That's what writers use. Anything, any creative field is utilizing thought versus thinking. It actually cuts off the source of creativity.
So how would you apply that to, just quick question, if you are planning a family vacation, you're like, should we go to New York City or should we go to Mexico, Ixtapa? So
Yeah.
thinking versus thought, how would you explain that?
Yeah. So I mean, it's just in that way, it's probably not that stressful trying to plan that. Okay, what if this person doesn't like this place, or what are my parents gonna think, or like,
Right.
just like judging the places. This place is like super dangerous. Like I shouldn't go here, or like the people are mean, or like all these different things are probably unnecessary, right? Like if your life is in danger, that's totally different, right? Like
Hmm.
get out of the situation, kind of use your fight or flight response to get out. But very rarely are we in that fight or flight situation. 95% of our time is spent in, non-life-threatening situations. So in this case, let's say we're planning that vacation, it's more so following your intuition. What is your intuition saying? Where do you want to travel to? What seems most exciting? What seems expansive, aligned, and unknown? That is usually your intuition speaking. Thinking, on the other hand, feels very heavy, and if planning is causing you a lot of stress, like why do you think that is? Like, can you get help in any single way? What are you worried about? Like, what is the fear driving this stress? Usually it's, pertaining to, either judging yourself or what other people are how other people are judging you. I think my friend's gonna think all that stuff. Like,
Hmm.
they think that I don't have money. Like, why am I traveling? Like, all that is what
Yeah,
causes the
yeah,
stress, not like the actual planning, so to speak.
yeah.
So that's when it's important to create that distinction so you can understand, like, oh, this is the source.
Yeah, thank you. Really helpful. That was really helpful. So
Yeah.
I have to ask, tell me, do you find yourself at times ever getting caught in your mind, in your thinking mind, in your ego mind?
Oh, all the time. That's just like a human thing. Yeah.
Right, right.
It's
Uh,
almost, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's
uh,
extremely difficult, highly unlikely that someone can just stay in a total state of peace, like
right.
100% of the time, 24/7. The only people
Hmm.
that might be able to do that, I mean, monks aren't even able to do that.
I'm just making sure you're human because I
Yeah,
have
yeah,
experiences too.
can confirm, right?
Uh,
That I'm not a robot. So, and all these things, like pain is very interesting. Like it's usually, pain, fear, and like these things like we think are really bad, but really, like when you kind of take a step back, like I kind of use those instances to become curious about life. Like they're usually messengers,
hmm.
and trying to
Yep.
tell us something. Like, hey, pay attention to this. Like there's something here that you haven't seen before. So that's what I really use those
Hmm.
emotions for, even though they are perceived as quote unquote
Right.
negative, even though they're really not.
Yep.
Any quote unquote negative emotion, is really, it's calling us back in. It's meant to, teach us something that we haven't really seen before. It's showing us where there's lack of awareness, and it's not a bad thing. It's really an opportunity for growth. So yeah, I fall back all the time. It's less. What's less important is how many times you slip back into thinking. What's more important is how long are you staying there, to a place of, grounding. That just comes from the deep breaths, like we were talking about before, and reminding myself that, this thinking that I'm doing is, causing my suffering. And it's like, do I want to continue? Is this thinking making me feel the way that I want? And within a matter of minutes, yeah, I'm back to baseline, and it is possible to feel a lot of these quote unquote negative emotions, but not have to like suffer as much. So sometimes we go through a very, like sad event, and it's totally fine to feel all those emotions in their entirety and not resist them. It's in the resistance that, what we resist persists, and what we, maybe initially thought was one of the worst things in the world, can actually become kind of beautiful in a way. Let's say we lost someone or something like that. Like it's extremely painful, but at the same time, like we start to see that, we only feel this way because we love them so much. So like there's a flip side
Mhm.
to a lot of these things. What do we learn from it? Like how do they enrich our lives? How can we bring the same sort of love to other people? Those are the sort of thoughts that we can have when we, let go of the judgment of it. Like, I'm never going to be able to feel this way again, or I'm never going to have another person like this. Like, all those things are thinking that doesn't really benefit the situation.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's possible to experience those emotions without needing the negative commentary, so to speak.
Mhm. Lovely. Thank you. Yeah, I think the pathway to healing is feeling your feelings. And like
Yeah.
you, similarly, I can just tell when like choom, my ego mind takes off and I like catch it and like shoo, come back.
Yeah.
It's a practice awareness, like, ooh, there I went. Okay, coming back. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So curious, I'm curious, what do you have your favorite way of coming back into the moment? I mean, when you catch yourself and all of a sudden you're thinking, and I hear it's very short, but I don't know if you like consciously like, okay, I'm going to come back with my breath, or sometimes I'll just feel like my hands, or, just to bring you back into the moment, into your body. Do you have a favorite way you come back?
Yeah, so I have so in my new expanded edition of the book, like I go through this new framework in there, which is the pause framework. And that's a like a I think five or so step process. It's super simple.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that you remember is pause is an acronym. So the first word is P, so that's pause, pause and take deep breaths. You can even say to yourself like pause whenever you're experiencing some sort of very visceral emotion and pausing and then taking those deep breaths. So usually
Nice.
you can simply take deep breaths or follow this 4-7-8 method or the box method, box breathing method. I usually just take deep breaths, anywhere between 5 and 10 is
Mm-hmm.
good. And then you go to the next step, which is A, and that's ask. Ask yourself, is this thinking making me feel the way that I want? Do I want to keep suffering or not? If I don't want to keep feeling that way, or if this thinking isn't helping or isn't making me feel the way that I want, then I go to the next step, and that's you, which is understand that I have the choice to let go. I have the ability to kind of just let go of the thinking, let go of my judgment of whatever the situation is, or myself, or other people. And then S is say. I love that mantra so much, and mantras have a lot of different kind of implications and effects. But one of the most powerful ones is that when you're repeating a mantra, you can't really think about anything else. You can use any mantra really, as long as it's grounded in truth, and helps you bring you back to yourself. Then what that does is it reminds you of one, the truth, but then also two, stops, yourself from kind of going on that, runaway thinking train. Uh, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's S, right? And that's say and repeat the mantra. Then the last step is E, which is experience your emotions fully. So that's what I was saying before about not bypassing emotions, but actually allowing yourself to feel it fully and not being afraid of feeling those things. Understanding that your emotions can't kill you, right? They're there as messengers to show you something that you haven't seen before, to help you become aware of the things that you might not have been aware of prior. So that's the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
Very simply, take deep breaths and ask yourself, is this thinking making me feel the way that I want? Understand that you have the choice to let go of that thinking, then saying and repeating the mantra, thinking is the root cause of suffering, and then experiencing your emotions fully without resistance. I do that process every single time that I feel any negative emotion, anything like that. And within a matter of minutes, most of the time it dissipates, or at least 80% of the um, kind of the intensity of emotion kind of dissipates. And then within a few minutes afterwards, it'll pass as long as I'm able to
Mm.
let go of that thinking.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, what would you say? I'm curious. The last 2 years have been really big years for you, and the just your last book, Don't Believe Everything You Think. Biggest learning, gleaning, yeah, in the last year or two. Takeaways of life.
Yeah. Um, I'm just learning so much every single day. Um, one of the biggest things is that there's never an end to how much I can learn, how much I
Mhm.
can discover, how much deeper I can go within myself, how much I can rely on intuition to really um, take care of myself, take care of other people, to create things. Um, it always surprises me how much I don't know, rather than what
Mhm.
I do know. And the more that I trust that process, the more that I'm seemingly rewarded. But it's not really for me anyway. It's really to just give back as much as possible. Um, yeah, I think people really underestimate the power of their own hearts and intuition. And so that's kind of like my next focus in life is just to, once we're able to kind of let go of our thinking, then to guide people back to their hearts, trusting themselves more. Um, most of the time we overthink things because we're weighing a bunch of different options, but what we're really doing is we're trying to avoid the fear, fear of what other people are going to think about us, fear of failure, fear of whatever it is. But once you kind of understand that, I could fail, but that's not the end of the world, and that I'll still survive. But what's more important is my peace and trying and following my heart. The more that I do that, the more abundance that I'm able to find and create. And it looks like other people are able to do that as well now. So that's a huge one, for me. Um, and yeah, it's just I'm always surprised so much. I try not to hold any, opinions of anyone, of anything. Um, and yeah, it's just I'm always tested, right? Of a new situation that pops up. Am I just gonna fall back into fear or fall back into love? Am I gonna follow the the negative, inner critic, or am I gonna follow my heart? Um, and so now I'm just constantly defaulting to the heart, even though it's not logical. No one really understands it. I can't really explain it, but logic can really only be explained in hindsight. Um, and or your intuition can really only be explained in hindsight. Uh, And so, making the decision to write the book or to do these things is all just intuition, but it made no sense when I first did it. Absolutely. Most people won't understand. I don't think, most people will definitely not understand when you make those intuitive decisions. But they don't have to. As long as you feel that it is, aligned with you and right for you, that's really all the confirmation you need. And the more you operate from that space, the more peace you'll find.
Thank you for sharing that. That is great. And I find it amazing how every one of us and everyone listening, we all get so much guidance if we can slow down, be still, listen, being here,
Yeah.
just this moment. I mean, it's all there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, most of the time when we're deciding between anything, we already know the answer.
Mm.
We're just trying to kind of
Mhm.
negotiate or trying to justify our decision, right? Or we're
Mhm.
trying to avoid fear, right? That's really what we're combating. Um, but when you kind of remove those external pressures
Mhm.
of other people, opinions or anything, consequences, the choice becomes very, very clear of what you want to do. And so it's
Mhm.
important to kind of listen to what that is.
And sometimes we might get guidance in a direction that we're like, really? That's really what you want me to do? But just feeling into it, sitting with it, and then just trusting, yep, I'm being led and leaning into that. I think it can take courage too.
Oh yeah, of course it does.
Okay, so last question I want to ask you. Can you tell me what you think awakening is? What awakening is, what your experience of awakening is? How would you define awakening?
I would say it's becoming aware of truth.
Mm.
That to me is what awakening is.
Mm.
Shedding the illusions of ourselves, of the world, letting go of our judgments, preconceived notions, opinions. That alone is what awakening is. Awakening is not like it doesn't come through force. It actually comes through letting go. And we naturally awaken when we do that.
And would you say awakening into this truth, this universal mind, how we're called to live in this world? Does that resonate with you?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being on today. So delightful to see you. How can people find you? What social media? Your books everywhere.
Yes, so you can find all my books on my website, so josephnguyen.org, JOSEPHNGUYEN.org, or you can go on Amazon. My book, Don't Believe Everything You Think, is available in most bookstores as well. And then my social media is, you know, YouTube and Instagram is mainly where you'll find me. Those handles are, the at symbol, and then it's ITS Joseph Nguyen, JOSEPHNGUYEN. I have a lot of YouTube videos that I don't post too
Mm.
often, but every single post that I make is kind of evergreen, so you can kind of take a look at the collection that I have there, and hopefully they'll help you on your journey.
Well, thank you again. It's such a delight to see you, to talk to you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm so excited for you and your
Thank you
journey.
so much, Catherine. It's always such a
Blessings.
joy to be able to
Oh,
to, to connect. So I
a
really
treat.
appreciate
Thank you.
the beautiful energy.
Thank you. Blessings. Thank you so much for joining Everyday Awakening. Let's keep the conversation going online. You can follow me on Instagram at Catherine Duncan, MABCC. And to keep up to date on the show, subscribe on iTunes and leave a review. I'd love to hear from you.